Here it is, our first book. Hope you enjoy it. It is called The Book Gluck, written by Dr. Victor Beaton, and it's a very interesting story. It is a story within a story as we begin. And there's a little boy named Lionel who starts it all off when he asks his grandfather, "Saba," that's his grandfather, "I got a new book. Could you read it to us?" And he held up the book with a peculiar yellow flower on the cover. They sat in the garden under a big tree. The garden was always full of surprises. There was a little patch of bushes that were Lionel's favorite. There was, however, a part of the garden that Saba, the grandfather, asked them not to visit unless there was a dire need for help. He told them, "You see, it is the house of the Glucks. They're miniature creatures who specialize in providing help, but they don't like to be disturbed unless it's an absolute necessity." And the kids said, "Anyway, are you going to read us a story or not? The stars are about to come out, Grandpa." And Saba, the grandfather, said, "Okay." And he grabbed the book and he started reading. He said, "A long time ago, in a small village by the big forest, there lived a family. They had a simple and happy life. Once a week, they would get together for a lovely dinner Grandma cooked. Many times the uncle would play the guitar and the kids would sing and dance. The star of the show was always Glacier, their dog. He was giant and had fluffy white fur. When anyone entered the house, all they could be seeing was a pile of snow with a long tongue sticking out, dashing at visitors, ready to lick them to death. They couldn't ask for more. Until one day, Glacier would not even touch his favorite treat. He wouldn't even put up a single paw to the music. Zoe, the little girl, asked, "What's wrong?" But Glacier only stuck out his tongue and sighed. Every week he looked worse. Everyone was worried about him. Zoe's papa called the veterinarian, who examined him carefully and ran some tests. At the end, the vet said in a somber voice, "Only one thing can help this dog, but that medicine is so rare and dangerous that even I don't have any. He has to eat the petals of the curing yellow flower." Zoe, the little girl, asked, "Well, why don't you have any?" And the veterinarian replied, "It's not easy to get. It's in the midst of the forest where there are two patches of yellow flowers, but one heals and the other is so dangerous it can make things much worse." Zoe asked, "Well, how do you know which one is which?" And the vet said, "Well, there are signs, but there is an evil gnome who wants all the flowers to himself. He'll change the signs if he sees anyone coming. So one needs to be very careful." Zoe said, "I need to help my Glacier, please. I'm so small, so if I go, the gnome will not notice me. I'm sure he'll miss me." And the next morning, Zoe started walking to the forest. As she approached the crossroad, her gaze was lifted, looking for the signs, and she didn't notice a small root coming out of the ground. She tripped and fell into a pile of leaves with a wild crunch. A voice said, "What was that?" It was the gnome, startled from his nap. He climbed to the top of the hill and saw Zoe rising. "Aha!" he said. "I see it's that little girl trying to find the yellow flower. It won't be easy." Grunting, he went to the signs before Zoe could see him, switching the signposts with a laugh. "Ha ha ha ha!" At this point, Grandfather, who's, remember, reading the book to his granddaughter, is stopped by the granddaughter, Beauty Mark, and she says, "Stop, Saba, I don't like this story." And little Lionel, her brother, said, "What can we do? We need help." And the little girl says, "I think maybe it's time that we go to the Gluck's house." And the grandfather said, "That's a good idea." And they walked quickly to the little gate in their garden and opened it for the first time. They entered a place like no other. Everything was tiny: flowers, trees, fountains. The light was purple, and tiny stars and a moon were hanging above the trees. The little boy Lionel said, "Hey, what are those?" pointing to tiny little pink creatures that looked like miniature panda bears with wings. And the grandfather said, "Ah, Those are the Glucks. The little boy said, the Glucks? He wasn't sure. And the grandfather said, no, the Glucks. It's short for good lucks. He gestured to a pink and yellow striped one. This one is the chef or chief Gluck. He saved the day during the prince and princess's wedding, removing at the very last minute a clump of bitter herbs a bad witch put inside their cake. And this one, he said, pointing at a purple Gluck with white teardrops on her chest, is the water Gluck. She saved the one and only ice cream tree during a devastating drought. Beauty Mark, the little girl, said, we need some help. She held up the book for the Glucks to see. She said, the little girl in this book is about to take the wrong turn and find the wrong flower. And the music abruptly stopped. There was a little buzz in the air, and the Glucks flew in formation, creating a shape of an arrow pointing to a tiny, shy green Gluck that looked blearily up from a book of her own. And Lionel said, hey, I think they're telling us she can help. And the creature said, Mammy Young, I'm the book Gluck. And she set her book down, rubbing her eyes. I think I can help you. I can enter any story and change it from the inside. And Beauty Mark said, please. The shy Gluck fluttered forward and dove into the illustration as the gnome walked away. She swooped to the signs and swapped them once more, just in time before Zoe arrived at the intersection. And like a flash, she leapt out once more. Saba, the grandfather, Beauty Mark, and Lionel leaned over the book. Zoe followed the sign in the book and picked up the yellow flower and then ran all the way back home. She gasped, here's the flower! And she held it up to poor Glacier's lolling tongue. Glacier licked the flower. He licked it again, and then with a happy snap, he ate the whole thing standing up straight. He bounded over to his girl, all well again. He barked happily, whoop, and licked Zoe's face so hard she didn't need a bath for 2 weeks. Back to the readers of the book, grandfather, Beauty Mark, and Lionel all sat back and sighed happily. And Beauty Mark said, oh, that's nice. And the little brother said, see, Saba, the ending wasn't sad at all. And grandfather said, well, there's no bad ending that a little magic can't fix. And he winked. The end.